First contact and the treaty. The star system had been quiet for millennia before human ships arrived. Captain Maya Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Pathfinder, Earth's most advanced diplomatic vessel, as it approached the massive space station that served as the headquarters for the Galactic Assembly. Through the view screen, the station resembled an intricate snowflake, its crystalline arms extending outward in geometric precision, each housing representatives from different species across the known galaxy. "Nervous, Captain?" asked Commander Elijah Drake, her second in command. Maya's dark eyes remained fixed on the approaching station. "Not nervous, Elijah. Cautious." She straightened her midnight blue uniform, the silver Earth insignia gleaming under the bridge lights. Humanity's first official contact with an interstellar government. Everything we say and do today becomes part of history. After decades of experimental warp technology development, humans had finally achieved reliable faster-than-light travel only 15 years ago. The discovery that the galaxy teemed with intelligent life came shortly after, when a human exploration vessel encountered a Morrigan trade ship near Alpha Centauri. That first, awkward encounter had led to this moment: formal recognition and potentially alliance with the Galactic Assembly. The Pathfinder docked with practiced precision, magnetic clamps securing it to the station's human-adapted berth. Maya led her delegation through the airlock. 6 diplomatic officers, 4 xenolinguists, and 2 security personnel, though the latter were more symbolic than practical. If the Assembly wanted them dead, 12 humans with sidearms wouldn't make a difference. Assembly representatives waited in the reception chamber, a vast hall with a ceiling that simulated a nebula, swirling gases illuminating the space with soft, constantly shifting light. 5 different species stood in formation, their biology as varied as their civilizations. The Morrigans, insectoid beings with iridescent carapaces and compound eyes, had been humanity's first contact. Beside them stood the Arcadians, tall humanoids with bluish skin and 4 arms, known for their mathematical brilliance. The Valkyrians, reptilian beings with elaborate scale crests, regarded the humans with obvious suspicion. The gelatinous, translucent Gen floated in specialized gravity suits, their thoughts communicated through pulses of bioluminescence. And at the center stood the Novan, ancient crystalline entities whose civilization predated all others, their faceted bodies refracting the nebula light into prismatic patterns across the floor. "Welcome, representatives of Earth," spoke the Novan elder, Celestina, her voice translated through the humans' earpieces. "The Assembly recognizes humanity as the newest spacefaring civilization in our shared galaxy." Maya stepped forward, her voice clear and confident. "On behalf of Earth and all humanity, we thank the Assembly for this invitation. We come seeking knowledge, trade, and peaceful cooperation." The formalities proceeded through the equivalent of 3 Earth days. The humans presented their history, capabilities, and aspirations. The Assembly members shared information about galactic protocols, established trade routes, and disputed territories. By the 3rd day, negotiations for Earth's provisional membership began in earnest. "Your species advances rapidly," observed Thrix, the Valkyrian ambassador, his voice carrying the sibilant undertone. "From atmospheric flight to warp capability in less than 2 centuries. Some might find such acceleration concerning." Maya recognized the implied threat. "Adaptation is humanity's greatest strength, Ambassador. When faced with challenges, we evolve quickly." "Indeed," commented Celestina. "Your biological and cultural evolution patterns are quite unique among known species. You developed without oversight from any established civilization." The unspoken question hung in the air: were humans too unpredictable, too dangerous to welcome into the galactic community? On the 4th day, the Assembly presented the Treaty of Recognition, the standard agreement offered to newly spacefaring civilizations. Maya and her diplomatic officers spent hours reviewing its provisions. "Typical power imbalance tactics," said Security Chief Reyes. "They've done this before with other species." Maya spent that night unable to sleep, reviewing humanity's position. By morning, she had made her decision. She entered the assembly chamber alone, carrying Earth's response on a data crystal, an intentional formality when quantum transmission would have sufficed. "The people of Earth are honored by your recognition," she began, "but we propose several amendments to the Standard Treaty." A murmur rippled through the assembly representatives. New species rarely negotiated terms. "First, we request expansion rights to 30 systems, with priority selection in the Orion Spur." She continued through her list of proposed changes: balanced technology exchange protocols, human representation on trade route committees, and independent colonial governance systems. The Valkyrian ambassador hissed his disapproval. Unprecedented demands from an unproven species. "Not demands, Ambassador. Proposals offered in good faith," Maya replied evenly. "Humanity doesn't seek dominance, only equitable partnership." Negotiations extended another week. Earth conceded on some points, stood firm on others. Finally, a modified treaty took shape: 30 star systems with 15 immediate colonization rights, balanced technology exchange, representation on minor committees with potential for advancement. On the final day, as the treaty was being prepared for ratification, Maya introduced one last provision, one she had been instructed to include by unanimous vote of Earth's United Nations Security Council. "We require one absolute condition," she stated, her voice carrying throughout the chamber. "The harming of human children will be considered an act of war against all humanity, punishable by our full response. This is non-negotiable." The assembly representatives exchanged confused glances. "This is unusual," said Celestina, the crystalline surfaces of her body pulsing with light. "Most species naturally protect all their members equally. Why specify children? If you agree that children deserve protection, then you should have no objection to including this provision," Maya replied simply. After brief consultation, the assembly accepted the addition, viewing it as a cultural curiosity rather than a significant treaty element. None of them truly understood the evolutionary and cultural significance of child protection in human society, how humans had developed as a species that invested extraordinarily long periods in raising their young, how their entire social structure had evolved around protecting their vulnerable offspring. The Treaty of Recognition was signed with due ceremony. Captain Maya Chen pressed her thumb against the biometric scanner, officially marking Earth's entry into galactic politics. As the human delegation prepared to depart, Commander Drake leaned close to Maya. "Do you think they understand what that last clause really means?" he whispered. Maya watched the aliens mingling, their movements still strange to human eyes. "No," she replied quietly. "They see it as a quirk, a peculiarity of a primitive species. They have no idea." Within months, human colony ships departed for their newly recognized territories. The most significant of these was Horizon, a resource-rich world 16 light-years from Earth. Within 3 years, a thriving colony of 50,000 humans had established themselves there, with families, schools, and a new generation of children born under alien skies. The Valkyrians observed the rapid development with growing concern. They reproduce quickly, noted High Commander Cyrix to the Valkyrian Council. Their resource consumption exceeds initial projections by 30%. The Council approved their settlement, his subordinate reminded him. "For now, we observe only," Cyrix replied, his scaled crest flattening in irritation. "But preparations must be made. Resources are finite, and humans multiply." Neither species truly understood what had transpired with that treaty clause. To the assembly, it seemed like an odd but harmless condition. To humans, it was the most fundamental protection they could imagine, a line that must never be crossed. Captain Maya Chen, now serving as Earth's permanent ambassador to the assembly, often stood at the viewport of the diplomatic station overlooking the galaxy map. She thought about that clause in the treaty, buried among provisions about trade routes and technology exchange. "They have no concept of what humanity is capable of when our children are threatened," she told Lin during a private moment. Ambassador Lin nodded solemnly. Let's hope they never have to find out. As Horizon flourished in the coming years, the significance of that treaty clause faded from the minds of most in the Assembly. But deep in their archives, the provision remained. The harming of human children will be considered an act of war against all humanity. It would be 10 years before the Galactic Assembly would understand what those words truly meant. The incursion. 10 years after the signing of the Treaty of Recognition, the colony on Horizon had transformed from a collection of prefabricated habitats into a thriving settlement. The planet's twin moons cast silver light over a landscape now dotted with human structures. Residential complexes, research facilities, and schools where the first generation of Horizon-born children learned about both their Earth heritage and their new home among the stars. On this particular morning, Dr. Samira Patel conducted final checks on the educational shuttle preparing to take 32 children on a field trip to Horizon's famous Aurora Caves, where mineral deposits created spectacular light displays. "Everyone in your assigned seats," she called out, moving down the aisle of the shuttle. The children, ranging from 7 to 12 years old, buzzed with excitement. "Dr. Patel, will we see the singing crystals?" asked 8-year-old Zoe, her dark curls bouncing as she practically vibrated in her seat. Samira smiled. "If we're quiet enough, they might just perform for us." The shuttle lifted off smoothly, its anti-gravity systems humming as it rose above the colony's main settlement and turned toward the distant mountain range. None of them noticed the small stealth craft tracking their movements from high altitude, its advanced cloaking technology rendering it invisible to Horizon's defensive systems. Inside that craft, Valkyrian Commander Thrix observed the human transport with cold calculation. His scaled skin was a dull green marked with the ceremonial scars of his high rank. "Target confirmed," reported his tactical officer. 32 juvenile humans, 2 adult supervisors, minimal security. Thrix nodded, his crest extending slightly in anticipation. "Perfect. The message must be clear but measured. We are not barbarians. This is simply resource politics." He turned to his communications officer. "Prepare to broadcast on all frequencies once the operation is complete." The Valkyrians had spent years observing human expansion with growing concern. Horizon sat at the edge of a resource-rich sector that the reptilian species had been gradually preparing for their own expansion. The human colony's rapid growth threatened their long-term plans. After careful analysis, the Valkyrian High Command had determined that humans, like most species, would abandon territories when faced with sufficient risk. A demonstration was required, something significant enough to prompt retreat, but not severe enough to trigger an all-out war with Earth. The educational shuttle followed the programmed flight path through a narrow canyon, the perfect location for the Valkyrian plan. Thrix gave the signal, and his weapons officer activated a focused ion disruptor. The invisible beam struck the shuttle's propulsion systems with surgical precision. Inside, the first indication of trouble was a sudden lurch. Warning lights flashed across the control panel as the shuttle systems began failing one by one. The pilot, a colony veteran named Marcus Weber, fought to regain control. "Everyone stay in your seats and secure your harnesses," Samira called out, trying to keep her voice calm as she moved quickly to help the younger children. The anti-gravity generators sputtered and died. For a terrifying moment, the shuttle hung in the air 30 meters above the rocky canyon floor, then began to fall. Marcus managed to engage the emergency thrusters, slowing their descent somewhat, but the craft still struck the ground with devastating force. The front section crumpled against the rocks, the impact throwing children from their seats despite the safety harnesses. From his observation craft, Thrix watched dispassionately. "Scan for survivors and record all data," he ordered. The humans must understand this was precisely calculated, not an extermination, but a message. Rescue teams from the Horizon colony reached the crash site within 20 minutes, having detected the shuttle's emergency beacon. What they found was devastating. Marcus had been killed instantly in the impact. Dr. Patel had suffered severe injuries while shielding several children with her own body. Of the 32 children, 27 survived with varying degrees of injury. 5 had not survived. As medical teams worked frantically to stabilize the injured, Colony Security Chief Carmen Rodriguez examined the shuttle wreckage, her experienced eyes immediately spotting the signs of external interference. This wasn't an accident, she told Governor Adeyemi, who had arrived at the site. The propulsion system was targeted with a precision weapon, military grade. Governor Jamal Adeyemi's face hardened as he looked at the broken bodies being gently placed in medical transport pods. "Find out who did this," he said, his voice barely controlled. Immediately. That evening, as the colony observed a solemn silence for the lost children, a transmission was received on all communication channels. The scaly visage of Commander Thrix filled screens across Horizon. "People of Earth's Horizon colony," the Valkyrian began, his translated voice coldly formal. "Today's unfortunate incident demonstrates the inherent dangers of your current settlement location. The Valkyrian Imperium formally notifies you that this region contains unstable gravitational anomalies that make it unsuitable for permanent habitation, particularly for species with vulnerable young. As a gesture of interspecies cooperation, we offer assistance in relocating your population to more suitable worlds within your allocated territory. You have 1 standard cycle to begin evacuation procedures." The transmission ended abruptly. In the colony's communications center, Governor Adeyemi and his crisis team sat in stunned silence. "They're claiming it was a natural phenomenon," said Science Director Wei, her voice shaking with fury. "After deliberately targeting children, they expect us to abandon Horizon," Rodriguez added. "This is a territorial play, pure and simple." Governor Adeyemi stood, his decision made. "Send a coded quantum transmission to Earth Central Command. Priority Alpha." He paused, then added the words that would change the course of human-alien relations forever. "Guardian Protocol violated. 5 children confirmed deceased. Request immediate implementation." On Earth, the message was received in the middle of the night at Strategic Command Headquarters in Geneva. Within minutes, emergency protocols activated across the planet. Defense forces moved to high alert. Colony fleet vessels began preparations for immediate deployment. In her quarters at the Galactic Assembly Diplomatic Station, Ambassador Maya Chen was awakened by a priority communication. As she read the message, her blood ran cold. For 10 years, she had hoped the Guardian Protocol would remain theoretical. Now, it had been activated. She dressed quickly in her formal diplomatic uniform and requested an emergency session of the Assembly Council. As she waited for the Council to convene, she sent a brief acknowledgement to Earth. "Protocol understood. Diplomatic measures initiating. May God have mercy on them, because we will not." The Valkyrians, meanwhile, considered the operation a success. Commander Thrix reported to his superiors that the demonstration had been executed with minimal casualties, regrettable but necessary collateral damage in their resource competition. "The humans will withdraw within a standard cycle," he predicted confidently. No species would remain after such a warning. What the Valkyrians failed to understand was the significance of those 5 lost children. They had no conception of what they had just unleashed, of the line they had crossed, written clearly in a treaty they had dismissed as containing a curious but meaningless clause. As news of the attack spread through human space, a terrible resolve settled over Earth and its colonies. Military vessels changed course, converging on the Horizon system. Reservists were called to active duty. Weapons platforms dormant since the last Earth conflict powered up. The Valkyrians would soon learn what happened when human children were threatened. The Guardian Protocol had been activated, and humanity's response was coming. The response. The Galactic Assembly Emergency Session convened 12 hours after the Horizon incident. Representatives from all member species gathered in the Grand Chamber, murmurs of concern filling the vast space. Many had received reports of unusual activity across human territories. military vessels mobilizing, civilian ships being retrofitted with defensive capabilities, industrial production shifting rapidly to unknown purposes. Ambassador Maya Chen entered the chamber alone, her midnight blue uniform replaced by one of deep crimson, a detail that would later be understood as significant. She took her position at the human delegation's platform, her face a composed mask that betrayed none of the emotion roiling beneath. The assembly recognizes Earth's representative, intoned Celestina, the Novan elder who had presided over humanity's admission to the galactic community a decade earlier. Ambassador Chen, we understand there has been an incident involving your colony on Horizon. The Valkyrian delegation has informed us of gravitational anomalies in that region which... There were no gravitational anomalies, Maya interrupted, her voice cutting through the chamber like a blade. A shocked silence fell. Interrupting the elder was unprecedented. The Valkyrian military deliberately attacked a shuttle carrying 32 human children. 5 children died. This was a calculated act of aggression disguised as a natural disaster. The Valkyrian representative, Sub-Commander Zex, rose from his seat. These are serious accusations without evidence. We merely warned your colony about documented spatial instabilities. We have the weapon's signature, Maya replied coldly. We have visual confirmation from surveillance satellites. We have the bodies of our children. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle across the chamber. The Valkyrian Imperium has violated Article 27, subsection C of our recognition treaty. The harming of human children will be considered an act of war against all humanity. A ripple of confusion moved through the assembly. Few remembered this peculiar provision from a decade ago, buried among standard treaty language. Celestina's crystalline form pulsed with concerned light patterns. Ambassador Chen, surely diplomatic resolution is possible. The Valkyrian High Command claims no direct involvement. Earth has activated the Guardian Protocol, Maya announced. The words meant nothing to the aliens present, but the finality in her tone silenced the chamber. I am here not to seek the Assembly's intervention, but to formally notify you of humanity's response. She activated a holographic display in the center of the chamber. It showed the current positions of human military vessels, far more than the Assembly had believed Earth possessed, all converging on Valkyrian space. As of 6 hours ago, Earth has declared a state of war with the Valkyrian Imperium. There will be no negotiations. There will be no ceasefire. There will be no settlement talks. The only communication we will accept is unconditional surrender. The Assembly erupted in protest. Such an extreme response to what many viewed as a minor incident, regrettable, yes, but hardly justifying all-out war, seemed incomprehensible. Ambassador, this is disproportionate, exclaimed the Arcadian representative. Surely compensation for the lost lives. You cannot compensate for children, Maya replied, her composure finally cracking slightly, revealing a glimpse of the cold fury beneath. You cannot replace them. You cannot make amends for their loss. This is not about justice or reparations. This is about ensuring that no species ever again thinks they can harm human children as a political calculation. With those words, she left the chamber, ignoring the calls for her to return. As the great doors closed behind her, she activated her secure communicator. Diplomatic notification delivered. They don't understand yet. They will. Over the next 72 hours, the galaxy witnessed a military response unlike anything in recent memory. Human warships emerged from hyperspace at every major Valkyrian outpost simultaneously. The Valkyrian Defense Fleet, considered one of the most formidable in the quadrant, found itself outmaneuvered and overwhelmed by human vessels using technologies the reptilians hadn't known Earth possessed. The Assembly frantically attempted to broker peace talks. The Novan elders sent personal appeals to Earth's government. All were met with the same response. The Guardian Protocol remains in effect until unconditional surrender. On the 4th day, humanity demonstrated technological capabilities that shocked the galactic community. Human ships deployed quantum disruption fields that rendered Valkyrian weapons inert. Precision strikes disabled military installations with minimal civilian casualties. AI-driven defense systems intercepted and neutralized every Valkyrian counterattack. "How is this possible?" demanded the Gen representative during an emergency assembly session. 10 years ago, they were barely achieving stable warp travel. Now they're deploying technology that rivals the Novan Confederation. The Morrigan ambassador's compound eyes reflected the tactical displays showing another Valkyrian defense outpost falling. They concealed their true capabilities. He chittered nervously. "All this time, we thought we were monitoring their development." "No," Celestina responded, her crystalline form dimmed with concern. "They advanced this rapidly because we threatened what they value most." Their entire society mobilized for this response. By the 6th day, the Valkyrian High Command had lost control of 13 colony worlds and their entire defense perimeter. Reports from the front lines described human soldiers fighting with a cold efficiency that terrified even the most battle-hardened Valkyrian troops. Not reckless or enraged, methodical, implacable, unstoppable. On the 7th day, Earth forces achieved what military analysts had considered impossible. They breached the defenses of Valkyria Prime, the heavily fortified homeworld of the reptilian species. Human ships took position around the planet, their weapons trained on key military and government facilities. In the Valkyrian Imperial Palace, High Commander Syrinx received the transmission he had been dreading. The human fleet admiral's face appeared on the screen, expression neutral but eyes burning with restrained fury. "Your military is defeated. Your colonies are occupied. Your homeworld is surrounded," stated Admiral Helena Reyes without preamble. "Ambassador Chen will arrive in 6 hours to accept your unconditional surrender. Prepare your full leadership council." When Maya Chen's diplomatic vessel landed at the Imperial Palace, she was escorted to the Grand Council chamber by silent Valkyrian guards. High Commander Syrinx and the full Imperial Council awaited her, their scaled crests flat against their heads in the cultural expression of submission. "The Valkyrian Imperium offers its complete and unconditional surrender," Syrinx stated formally. "We seek terms for—" "There are no terms," Maya interrupted. "There is only the judgment." She activated a holographic display showing hundreds of human warships in position around Valkyria Prime and every Valkyrian colony world. "Your civilization survives or ends today, by my word alone." For the first time, true fear rippled through the Valkyrian leadership. They had gravely miscalculated, failing to understand that the peculiar treaty clause wasn't a cultural curiosity, it was a warning. The 5 children who died on Horizon were named Zoe Patel, Marcus Kim, Layla Okafor, Thomas Nazari, and Jade Wilson. Maya said, her voice steady. "Their families will never see them grow up, never see what they might have become, never hold them again." She paused. "By the laws of ancient human civilizations, your entire species could be condemned for this crime." The Valkyrians trembled, realizing extinction was a real possibility. "But humanity's capacity for vengeance is matched by our capacity for mercy, when it is earned," Maya continued. "These are your conditions for survival: complete demilitarization, supervised resource allocation, reparations to the families of Horizon, and most importantly, a binding galactic treaty that adopts the Guardian Protocol for all species, protecting all children from being used as political or military targets." She placed a data crystal on the table between them. "Sign this, and your species lives. Refuse, and humanity finishes what you started." The Valkyrian surrender was broadcast across the galaxy. Within hours, the Galactic Assembly convened to ratify the new Universal Guardian Protocol, extending protection to the children of all species under galactic law. As Maya prepared to return to Earth, she received a private message from Celestina, the Novan Elder. "We did not understand," the ancient crystalline being admitted. The treaty clause seemed a peculiarity, not a warning. Now the galaxy has witnessed what happens when humanity's children are threatened. It wasn't just about punishment, Maya replied. It was about ensuring this never happens again to any species' children. The Guardian Protocol will be honored for generations to come, Celestina assured her. Some lessons need only be taught once. 1 year later, a memorial was dedicated on Horizon, at the site where the school shuttle had crashed. 32 crystal pillars, 27 tall, 5 small, caught the light of the planet's twin moons. At the base, a simple inscription read, "They did not die in vain." Captain Maya Chen, now Earth's senior diplomat to the Galactic Assembly, stood beside Governor Adeyemi as the memorial was unveiled. Children from the colony schools placed flowers at the base of each crystal. "Do you think the galaxy finally understands us now?" Adeyemi asked quietly. Maya watched as a Novan representative, 3 Arcadian diplomats, and even a single Valkyrian observer paid their respects at the memorial, each according to their own cultural traditions. "Yes," she said, "they understand that we can be the most terrible enemy or the most steadfast ally. They understand that our capacity for violence is matched only by our capacity for compassion. Most importantly, they understand that some lines must never be crossed." In the decade that followed, human expansion continued throughout their territory, but always with respect for the boundaries established in the treaty. The Valkyrians rebuilt their society under the new protocols, their military reduced to defensive capabilities only. And throughout the galaxy, the Guardian Protocol became the foundation of a new era of interstellar cooperation. Species that had been historical enemies found common ground in the protection of their young. Trade flourished. Cultural exchanges increased. Slowly, mutual understanding grew. On the 10th anniversary of the Horizon incident, representatives from every species in the Galactic Assembly gathered at the memorial. As the twin moons rose, they observed a minute of silence for 5 children whose deaths had changed the course of galactic history. When the Assembly session reconvened the following day, they ratified the Comprehensive Peace Accord, with the Guardian Protocol as its cornerstone. The galaxy had learned what humans had always known, that the measure of any civilization was how it protected its most vulnerable members. And across human space, parents told their children that they were safe among the stars, not because of warships or treaties, but because the entire galaxy now understood a fundamental truth. Mess with a human child, and you didn't just face parents or governments. You faced the full, terrible wrath of humanity unleashed.